This is an absolutely huge slowdown for the luxury sector. From 2025, it's anticipated until 2027. Due to their own doing, sales and growth are going to be down. Hey everyone, welcome to another video. I stumbled across a really interesting report, which I will link to below, but essentially it's talking about the state of the luxury industry, particularly this new year, 2025. I don't know about you, but I always feel like years that have a 5 in them are big years. They're years of massive change, for the good, for the bad, and I'm interested to see what this year brings. But the luxury sector is struggling, and it's struggling after 5 years of very good growth, where 80% of that growth has come from price rises alone. 80%, which is absolutely huge. But I'm going to go over briefly the last 5 years, or a little bit more than 5 years, what's kind of happened there, what's led us to this point, and then really what's going on from this point onwards, because sales are down, we're spending less, but the new generation, Gen Z, they're not as invested in luxury labels as millennials and older people are. So there's all of this going on, and we're going to explore all of it. So in the last 5 years, the luxury industry has really seen a growth, and you would be surprised to know what did it. COVID did it. If you remember back to COVID, so I would say between 2019 and 2023 are the biggest growth years for the luxury industry. And if you take COVID, that happened like right in the middle of that, basically. We had lockdowns that were really uncertain. No one knew what was going on. It was really quite scary, very lonely, nowhere to go, no one to see, couldn't really go out and, well, you couldn't go out and do anything. And it was just a period of great stress. And then on top of that, I don't know what it was like in your country, but in the UK we had the furlough scheme. And the furlough scheme was essentially where if you had an employer, your employer could either, I think they could either ask you to work remotely or they could furlough you. And if they furloughed you, the government would pay up to £2,500 worth of your salary each month. The only trade-off was that you actually were not allowed to work, as I remember. So you had lots of people who were isolated, at home, or living with parents. Suddenly they had spare money to spend, because the money that you would spend commuting into work, maybe train, bus, petrol for your car, diesel for your car, suddenly you're not having to spend that anymore. That really adds up. Commuting is so expensive. On top of that, if you think about small things that really add up, like buying your lunch every day when you're in the office. I mean, I can get a meal deal from Waitrose for £5, but if I times that by 5 days a week and times that by 52 weeks a year, that really gets expensive too. Plus the fact we couldn't travel, you couldn't eat out, you couldn't go to the cinema, go out in an evening. All of these things that we would normally spend our money on, we couldn't do those things anymore. And I think for a lot of people, retail therapy and online shopping became a way out of the pain. It's not the correct way out, but it was a way out nonetheless. It became a chink of joy in a room full of darkness to know that you'd ordered something and it was in the mail on its way to you. It became something to get excited about. And luxury fashion and the appetite for watches, handbags, ready to wear is no exception to the rule. Desire for those things during COVID went through the roof. And if some of you may remember, there were in news outlets reports and articles about queues around the block at the likes of Hermes and Chanel the day these stores opened up again, where luxury addicts and fans alike queued up in all sorts of weathers to get their fix, because everyone had been cooped up for so long. People wanted to get out and they wanted to get their luxury fix. And what happened? A lot of brands, not all, but a lot of brands had a surplus of stock because they didn't have online marketplaces. Like Chanel, for example, you can't buy from their website except for like makeup and such. But they had a surplus of stock, and then all of these brands put their prices up year on year throughout COVID. And if you take Chanel, for example, they put their prices up an average across various products in their lineup an average of just under 30% in 2020 alone, which is like really big. Really, really big. However, it didn't stop any of us. There were still queues, there were still those of us spending. And so whilst we complained about it and found it really like the wrong thing to do at the worst possible time, what can you do? You either buy the stuff and you pay the money, or you don't. And a lot of us chose to buy the stuff. That COVID period allowed the sector to achieve a 5% compound annual growth rate, and the luxury sector actually outperformed global markets during that period of time because of their price rises and their demand, and all of us wanting to go there and wanting to go shopping. And to put it in perspective, price rises accounted for more than 80% of growth. 80%. That will give you a little bit of an idea as to how high the price rises actually were. But things have changed. 2025, as we enter this new year, the luxury industry is seeing a slowdown, like a downturn, including actually some of those big brands that you think would be unaffected by it. They're all feeling the pain on some level, and it's for a multitude of different reasons. The first reason is the economic climate right now, pretty much globally. The threat of recession, higher taxes, people have got less money to spend. Add to that the fact that all of this stuff from luxury houses is so much more expensive than it used to be. So you've got people with less money to spend, not willing to spend high ticket prices on items that serve them no real purpose. Sales in China are also down a lot. And this is one of the reasons that Burberry admitted that they are having some issues right now, for two reasons. They've said that, first of all, they admit they've raised their prices too high, too fast, too soon. But they also have said that the sales in China for them are grossly down, and that that's really pulled them into some financial difficulties for sure. And China is a really important market. You guys in China, you love your luxury. And when you guys stop spending, these luxury brands feel it, because you make up such a large proportion of their revenue. And then the final three things which are leading the luxury industry into a bit of a slump up until 2027. The next thing is a younger audience, Gen Z. Gen Z are up and coming. They're here already. But Gen Z, by and large, aren't that interested in designer logos. I'm not saying that none of them are. A lot of them are. But compared to millennials and older generations, they're not as invested in it. And a lot of Gen Z are quite anti wanting to give their money to these big luxury conglomerates. Now, luxury brands have got a chance here to try and turn things around, to try and attract that younger audience and to try and get their money. If you look at brands like Louis Vuitton, what have they done recently? They have re-released the Murakami collaboration. My first initial thoughts were that they were going after millennials who remembered that collection, couldn't afford it at the time, and now are in a position where we could think to buy something. But actually, I think they're going after Gen Z. Take a look at the models they're using. They're using very young looking models, and the colours are all very reminiscent of that younger generation. It's a fun collaboration, it's a fun collection, and I think it's one that they are definitely aiming. I think aiming it at millennials is like a sub thing. I think actually this is being aimed at Gen Z. And then the final two reasons why they are seeing a downturn. The next one is to do with what we're all willing to spend our money on. Luxury brands have become too expensive for the items they're selling, and we are looking more at quality now. Quality, quality, quality. I'm hearing it all the time over social media. More people saying, I wanted to go and buy that bag and I saved up for it, but when I actually saw it in the store in real life, it didn't stand up to the price tag. It didn't look the price that it was being sold for, and therefore I decided not to get it. And more of us, I think, are looking at pre-loved as well, particularly brands like Chanel, where pre-loved Chanel pieces, particularly the pieces that have the gold hardware on them, the gold plating, they just feel better quality and better made than a lot of the newer items where flaps don't always line up and things like that. And then the final point, we're spending our money on different things, on other things now. If you look at Instagram as a barometer or TikTok as a barometer, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a lot of luxury channels turning their backs on making reels, let's say, of going into a boutique and buying a new bag, and instead they're making reels of luxury travel experiences, of fine dining, of staying in beautiful hotels. Like, everyone is skiing at the moment. What's that about? Well, I suppose it's ski season, but everyone seems to be on a ski trip right now and spending their money on making memories and luxury experiences instead of luxury goods. And these luxury brands, when I've read the report, they are well aware that we're doing this. And I think as well, another reason for this is a large proportion of luxury customers are middle class people. There is this thought that upper class people don't buy luxury. They do. And they buy labels. Trust me, they do. I've seen it. But the middle classes make up a large piece of the sandwich for these luxury brands. And if we're being squeezed by, I don't know, higher taxes, the economy, the cost of everything else that we have to pay for going up around us, then naturally we're going to spend a lot less on designer goods because it's not that important. I will link to this article below because it's really, really interesting. It's quite telling. It's quite alarming as well, actually, I will say. When I read it, I always think about luxury as this self-protected bubble that doesn't really get too affected by recessions. But no, you know, it's being affected and it's self-inflicted. By and large, it seems to be that the consensus is the reason why they're suffering now is because of these price rises. They've got to a point, you can put your prices up, but you can't really bring them back down again because then it looks like you were never worth it in the first place. Didn't Saint Laurent do that last year? They brought their prices back down again. But it just looks phony when you start doing that. And I think they've reached a point now where surely they can't keep going with the price rises. Surely. They've already reached insane. On a lot of these brands, they've already reached a point where they're absolutely not worth it. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.